Well, I've done lots of how-to videos for you guys. Today we're taking a different approach. We're gonna make a how not to do video. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's a nice Monday afternoon here, kind of a low-key day. Figured it'd be good to make a video here. This one actually is coming straight out of our own community. I had a commenter on one of the previous videos a couple weeks ago asking me some advice on building a stick-built kiln, and well, I said I'm just gonna make a video on that because it's a question I get quite often. And rather than me type a long, lengthy response, I figured it's a good subject for a video. So I'm just about to empty the kiln in question, and well, I thought no time like the present. Sun's out, and it's a good time to make a video. So I got to shut her down. The controls for this one are in my building, my lumber building here. So shut that down, shut the fans down. So the question was, the commenter is getting ready to build a kiln in spring. And obviously, if you've been following the channel, I have a container kiln. I have two stick-built kilns, actually. I have this big one, then I have a smaller one up at the other building. But he was looking for some advice on stick building a kiln. My advice to anybody looking to put together a Nile kiln, they're thinking about stick building, it's very simple. Don't do it. That might come as a shock to you, but I will never stick build a kiln again. It just doesn't make sense. I know the temptation is so great because obviously if you're putting in a kiln, 95% of the time you probably have a sawmill. It's the number one reason you're going to want to put in a kiln. Well, I know the temptation is so strong. Saw your own lumber, you know, you think, oh, I'll save so much money, I'll use my own labor to build it, I'll just buy some insulation, pour some concrete. Yeah, that sounds great. I've done it. I sawed this lumber. I poured the concrete. You're getting in way more than you think you will. I built this to Nile specs. So if you buy a Nile kiln, they'll give you a big manual and it will have blueprints to build a kiln chamber, and you size it to your dimensions, and they basically tell you, you know, your construction. And this kiln is probably 13 years old, so I don't remember everything off the top of my head, but basically 2x6 walls, fiberglass insulation, vapor barrier, foam insulation over top of that, then you sheathe it, then you paint it all with aluminized paint, and they spell it all out for you, and it all sounds great. And depending on the size of your chamber, it might work very well. But what I've found after running this and running the container kiln behind me, the container kiln is such a better bang for your buck. Those things are tailor-made for kiln use. They're all aluminum and stainless steel inside. They have about 3 inches of spray foam insulation, totally encompassing them. And I'm going to tell you what nobody ever tells you about kilns. The most important thing is right here, these doors. The doors are where you lose your heat. It's kind of just like a house. You lose your heat through your doors and windows. You know, I have super insulation in the ceiling, and the concrete slab's insulated, and the walls are insulated, and the doors are insulated. But that seam, you just cannot seal tight. Maybe if you're a better builder than me, maybe if you really, really engineer this ahead of time and think about it, you probably could get a nice seal. I mean, obviously on the big commercial kilns, they do it, but I don't think it's economical for the size of kiln we're talking about here. This is the second iteration of these doors. They were initially wooden once again, Niles specs, double frame, insulated. I think they had like some kind of cable to keep them tensioned. Well, they lasted a couple years, but over time, they wore out. They started to sag, and wood that's screwed together, as big as these doors are, it'll only last so long. So then I thought, well, I'm going to fix this problem this time. I welded up steel frames, I insulated the inside, I skinned it all with aluminum sheeting, I put in a steel frame around the whole opening of the kiln, and it's still not super tight. The problem is it's just too much surface area of seam. And when you're trying, this would be perfectly fine if this was a shop or a house or something, you're heating to 60, 70 degrees, not a big deal. This would be overkill. But when you're trying to heat to 120 degrees, 133 degrees, as cold a winter as we've been having this year, and I guess I should probably specify, if you're down south, this might be a different story, but my main problem with the stick-built kilns is efficiency. So it's probably not that big a deal if you're in a southern climate. So I'll put that caveat in there. If you're one of those guys down south where it doesn't get so cold, this may work pretty good for you. I'd still steer you in the direction of the container kiln though. So that's my biggest problem. Now, over time, these doors have started to sag. I have to, let me use 2 hands quick and open this up. It's pretty tight. So it's nice and warm in here, about 120 degrees. Got a load of pine I just finished up here. This is not my wood. It's gonna be tongue and groove, custom to a customer's specs. They supply the wood, so just a small little job there I'm gonna do tomorrow. Anyway, so this was built to Niles specs. Like I said, I got the wooden fan baffle, the wooden drop down baffles to shroud the stack, to circulate the air the way it's supposed to go. And as I mentioned, you can see the end wall there and the ceiling have this aluminized paint on it. Everything sheathed with plywood, and I spray foamed all the seams. And when I built it, it was pretty nice. After the course of 13 years in service here, I've been doing maintenance, little by little as it's needed, but it's getting pretty rough. My baffle's starting to sag here. That needs work. This plywood is kind of popping at spots and really should be redone. This is just the nature of kilns. They're a very, very harsh environment. This is running between 100 and 150 degrees, pretty much nonstop. And if you're drying something like oak that has a lot of tannins in the wood, very acidic, very corrosive. So anything that's plain steel is gonna rust. So everything should, as much as possible, be either painted or aluminum or stainless steel. So my problem with these stick-built kilns really is, yeah, you're gonna save a few bucks up front, but you're kind of saving a buck to spend 5 down the road. I mentioned the energy usage. This thing is not near as efficient as my big container kiln, which will hold an extra 1,500 feet over what I can put in here, just because of the way I have this sized. It's just not near as tight. A lot of that, like I mentioned, is from the doors, but you're going to spend a lot in energy cost, which is huge. When you're in this business, or even if you're doing it as a hobby, it's getting your costs down is the whole name of the game. And then the other thing, when it comes to construction, I built this back pre-COVID, before the world went crazy, and concrete is extremely expensive compared to what I paid. The steel for the doors, the insulation, the plywood sheathing, everything has gone up. So I don't know what this chamber would cost me to build at these dimensions, but one thing I can probably guarantee you, it's more expensive than that container over there. Now, this is going to vary for everybody because we're fortunate here. We're on the East Coast. We're close to a bunch of ports. I just priced not too long ago. I can get another one of those 40-foot insulated containers for, I think it was $6,500 delivered. If I was to saw all my framing lumber myself, and I haven't priced this stuff out, but I think you'd be very hard pressed to build this whole chamber for that amount of money. And quite honestly, some of you guys might be better carpenters than me. You're going to spend more and build an inferior product. On top of that, where we're standing right now, this kiln's about 18 feet inside. And at the time I built this with my business, I thought, well, I can put 2 8-foot stacks in there. I won't need more than that. You know, maybe at some point I'll have to dry some 16-foot lumber. That'll fit in. I've outgrown this. The Nile kilns will dry more hardwood than what I can fit in here. And it kind of is a hindrance that I can't double end a 10 and an 8-foot stack or 2 10s. That's another big win for the container kiln. I've got, the way I have that one set up, I have 34 feet of usable space, so I can end-to-end stuff. Now I can stack it higher in here because I have higher ceilings, but I still just can't get the capacity. And I mean, you can size, that's the one nice thing about a stick-built kiln. That's where they shine. You can size it to your needs. You know, if you're doing a container, you basically can buy a 40-foot container or you can buy a 20-foot container. That's about it. Those are your options. With this, if you have a certain space, you know, I've heard of guys building them inside of bigger buildings. Okay, I see a use case there. The other major thing that people will say is an advantage, and I agree, direct loading. I can open this up and I can direct load into that kiln with the forklift. You see in my container kiln, I have a track system and I have a roller cart and I winch out the cart and I unload it and I have to winch it back in. To me, it's well worth the trade-off. It's not that big a deal, but don't get me wrong, it is nice to be able to directly load into the kiln here. So I'm not going to say there's no advantages, but to me, container kiln is the way to go. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because I've taken phone calls from you guys, I've talked to you online, and so many people have so many questions on these kilns. I've been down the road, I've done them all each way. Heck, I even started with solar kilns, so I know something about that too. And they all have their pros and cons, and you know, there's no such thing as a perfect setup in anything, but for my money, container kiln is the way to go. In fact, I'm to the point now with this, as I showed you, this does need some work, and I'm really thinking about putting this thing out of service and just switching over and putting another container in. If I decide to do that, believe me, you guys will know. I'll document the process for you. I'm not totally sold on it. Depends on how time goes, depends how business goes this spring. But I'm kind of at the point I don't really see the sense of throwing them good money after bad. This kiln served me well. The drying unit, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, or the fans, you know, so all that stuff can be reused. Just the chamber itself is getting a little long in the tooth, and I just don't know if it's worth putting in the work to rehab it. So that's my 2 cents on how to build a kiln chamber, how not to build a kiln chamber. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. Hopefully I touched on a little bit of everything. You know, I'm looking at it from my perspective, where I'm at here in Pennsylvania. You might have something totally different. The one other thing I will throw in here, because I actually mentioned this on the phone when I was talking to somebody the other week. Nice thing about that container, if I'm ever sick of the lumber business, if I decide I've had it, I'm retiring, you can sell that container. I could actually sell that as a turnkey kiln. You know, all it takes is a company that moves containers to come pick it up here, get it out of here. You know, even if I just sell it as a container, not even as a kiln. So you have that flexibility. You can move the things around. They're pretty much modular. So that's another huge advantage. You know, depending on where you're at, tax implications for building something stick built on a concrete foundation versus something that's considered portable. These are all things to consider. I said just my 2 cents on it. Hopefully this helps a bunch of people, because like I said, it's a very, very common question I get. So there you have it, guys. I'm getting back to work. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, subscribe, like the video. I'll catch you on the next one.